Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be, ladies and gentlemen. I am Joe Szymanski with Elections Daily. I have another candidate interview for Virginia 2021 today. With me, she is a Norfolk City Councilwoman, a Democrat, and she is running for Lieutenant Governor, Andria McClellan. Ms. McClellan, thank you for coming on with me today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Happy to be here.
Okay, so the first question I ask this to everyone: what made you decide to run for Lieutenant Governor?
I decided to run because I know that we can be doing better in Virginia. I think I've got the experience, the skills to hit the ground running from day one, and I'm ready to take the job on.
Okay, so how did you first get involved in Virginia politics?
Oh, goodness. Does it count student council president in high school? Probably not. Uh, honestly, after graduating from Virginia Beach Public Schools, going to the University of Virginia, going out into the workforce, my family and I moved back to the region in around 2000, 1998. I'm sorry. And continued to get involved with the community, with nonprofits, and helping those in need. But that said, it was 2008 that really sort of sparked my interest to get back involved in the political game, and I became a precinct captain for the Norfolk City Democratic Committee, inspired by Barack Obama's run, and I've been involved ever since, helping candidates up and down the ballot, local, state, and federal level. Got involved at the state level in 2013, serving as treasurer for Ralph Northam's lieutenant governor campaign. And then I actually ran my first election very briefly, a 10-day special election in 2013 for that Senate seat for District 6 that opened up after Northam was successful in his LG race. It was a 10-day race. I was one of three candidates against two incumbents, and I came in third. But it was a great learning experience. And from there, I actually got more involved at the state level with the Democratic Party of Virginia and served as vice chair of finance in 2014 and 2015. And at that time, in 2015, I resigned my position to focus on local government because I decided to take on a 16-year incumbent here for the Norfolk City Council, which was a lot of fun. It was interesting having been involved with supporting lots of local candidates over the years. I talked with a variety of folks in the community when I decided to run, and I was shocked by some of the folks who said to me, Andrea, it's not your time. You need to wait your turn. You won't raise enough money. This isn't how it's done. And I, just said politely, thank you so much. I look forward to working with you if I'm successful. And fortunately, because I had a great team and I think I had a great message and people were ready for a change, I beat him in 19 of 23 precincts. And now I represent half of the city, so about 125,000 Virginians, which is actually the largest constituency of any of the lieutenant governor candidates in this race.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my friend how I got started in Virginia politics. I also I went through the Sorensen Political Leaders Program in 2013 and now serve on that state advisory board. And I'm also on the national advisory board for UVA Center for Politics.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned you grew up in the Virginia Beach area. You're in the Eastern Shore area now with Norfolk. One of the big issues that area faces is the effects of climate change. Do you think Virginia is giving enough focus to combating climate change in this area?
Uh, in a word, no. But let me clarify. So the Eastern Shore is not part of Norfolk. It's a different portion of the Commonwealth. And if I didn't clarify that, I'd have a lot of upset people. Unfortunately, what so often happens when people have a map of the Commonwealth, they leave off the shore, which is a big no-no. So I want to make sure I mention that. Listen, I've been involved prior to running for city council. I also served in the Planning Commission for 3 years. So I've been involved with land use issues and flooding for almost a decade. And I will tell you that there are so many things that need to be done here. Climate change is not a future issue. It's a here and now issue. The road that I drive to get to City Hall is often flooded several times a month on sunny days because of sea level rise. So we have got to be addressing both climate change mitigation. How do we reduce our future risk by reducing our carbon footprint, and climate change adaptation. So how do we deal with it now? So in a city which is home to the largest naval base in the world, one of the busiest ports on the East Coast, and second only to New Orleans in terms of flood risk, we have identified billions of dollars of projects infrastructure projects to address this, but we just simply do not have the funds to deal with this at the local level. So we need our state and federal partners to help out. We're making some headway. I helped to secure $120 million after Hurricane Sandy as part of the National Disaster Resilience Competition. While I was in the Planning Commission and now in Council, we're implementing that project where we're taking two neighborhoods on the eastern branch of the Elizabeth River, and we are trying to create the coastal community of the future with a variety of green and gray infrastructure projects. But to answer your question, listen, we need to do everything we can to introduce more clean, renewable energy to the Commonwealth. I'm very excited about the 5.2 gigawatts of offshore wind off the coast of Virginia Beach that I have been lobbying for since 2017. Was excited when the governor in 2018 announced that. I'm now on a statewide offshore wind task force to talk about how do we introduce also the jobs that will help support offshore wind, not only in Virginia, but North Carolina and up the East Coast up to Maine, potentially thousands of new jobs here. Electrification of our fleet, hugely important. I personally have driven an electric vehicle for 2.5 years. I'm excited about the legislation that was just passed in the General Assembly that will incentivize more EVs and create a better grid and infrastructure for charging, which is really critical. I think we need to look at our state building code to ensure that we have more sustainable building practices and resilient building practices as well. So, this is something I could talk on and on about. It's an issue that I've dealt with the local level, the regional level. I serve on the joint subcommittee on coastal flooding at the state level. I'm the American Flood Coalition Advisory Board at the federal level, and I'm also co-chair of a climate crisis work group with the New Deal leaders with Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes from Wisconsin. So it's something I'm very passionate about and would definitely want to make a core issue as Lieutenant Governor.
Okay, so outside of politics, you've been involved in the business world basically your entire adult life. How much do you think your experience in that part of your life would help you as lieutenant governor?
I think not only the specific business expertise, but also sort of the customer service, the understanding of how to create relationships. So the first job out of the University of Virginia I had was in industrial sales and marketing, and we were constantly trying to resolve issues, find resources for our customers, trying to identify ways where we could overcome barriers. They're all the very similar things that I do as a city council person. So, those skills just generally are going to be great to bring to the table. Having run two small businesses and understanding the challenges of access to capital, understanding the procurement issues, trying to find mentors and networking, those are things that are very difficult and absolutely things that we need to do a better job on as the Commonwealth. I'm really proud that Norfolk just was selected to be part of the Rockefeller Opportunity Collective, where we're leaning in specifically to micro businesses, small businesses within the women and minority community, because I think we need to do a better job of lifting up those entrepreneurs. And then the other work that I've done, I did chair the Small Business Advisory Board for the Commonwealth. I was appointed by Governor Warner 2003 to 2005. I served on that board. And now locally, I serve on the boards of 757 Angels, which is an angel investment group, and 757 Accelerate, which is helping entrepreneurs basically get ready to begin their investment journey.
Okay. A lot has been brought up in the Democratic primary for this race, at least that I've seen, about the role of the lieutenant governor. Would you try and expand that role, or would you kind of keep it in the role that it is now?
So the role that it is now is a part-time role, presides over the Senate, breaks ties, acts as the wingman to the governor, and is the second in command should something ever happen to the governor. The role that I would take would be a full-time role. I'm fortunate to be able to do that. I'd want to be a lot more accessible and visible and doing things in the Commonwealth. I'd love to be able to use that statewide platform to convene resources on the issues that I think are really important. Obviously, you work with the governor, whomever she or he is, to figure out what your role is. But if I could create a work plan for myself, I want to focus number one on broadband. I think access to broadband is our number one infrastructure issue. And I think we need to be putting more resources into it. We've done a good job. We need to do a great job. Virginia should look at this as a moonshot opportunity and strive to become the most connected state in the Commonwealth. So whether it's our rural communities that are currently unserved or our urban communities like Norfolk, where 25% of our homes don't have access to high-speed internet because it's not affordable, we need to be looking at both the unserved and the underserved. We also need to be looking at digital literacy, making sure people have devices. And so I'd love to convene a sort of best practices task force that would bring in federal resources, the private sector, nonprofits, academia, to really address this. They've done this in other states like Maine, and I just think we need to raise the profile of this because, listen, high-speed, affordable internet is not an amenity, not a nice to have. It is a utility and a need to have. And it connects our students to schools. It connects our seniors to their doctors, and quite honestly, registration for vaccines now. It connects our workers to the workplace. It connects our farmers to future and advanced agriculture. So I just think it's a huge issue. Obviously, we've already talked about helping small businesses, and I would add to that also making sure that we do a better job with workforce development training. On a personal level, my family moved here when I was 7 to Virginia Beach for my dad's job, and a few years after we arrived, my dad left. And my mom, God love her, had never at that point worked outside of the home. She was one of 8 kids, had never gone to college. Fortunately, she was able to go to Tidewater Community College, and after taking a couple of classes, became a technical illustrator and was able to make ends meet for my brother and myself. So that experience is something that is the reason I am where I am today. And as Lieutenant Governor, if I could give back and really focus on supporting our community colleges and our trade schools and apprenticeship programs. And by the way, I think there are going to be a lot of people as we come out of this COVID economy who need to be retrained and upskilled. I think that would be a great place for me to focus my attention. We talked about the environment, climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. So I would definitely work on that as well. I serve as vice chair of our public transit authority, so I'd love to see transit and transportation focused on more. I think public transit is something that improves the quality of life, is an economic development driver, and also helps us to reduce our carbon footprint. So the more buses, light rail, high-speed rail, multimodal, walking, biking, I think it's just very important for the Commonwealth to have that vision as well.
Okay. I've been lucky enough to have both Sean Perryman and Elizabeth Guzman come on with me and speak with me, and they've both said that in different ways that they would try to pressure the state senate into taking on more progressive legislation, which has kind of been a bane in the side of activist Democrats the last 4 years. Do you have any similar plans, or would you kind of continue the state senate run itself as a state senate and as it is now?
Well, listen, I think you can use the lieutenant governor's role to help caucus with the senators. I think that's important that you advocate on issues for sure. So, but I also think that there's a limitation as to making the Senate address issues is really, I think there's some limitations to how you could do that. But listen, more progressive issues. I think ensuring that everybody has broadband access is an issue of equity and is an incredibly progressive issue. Addressing more affordable housing, something that I'm doing here locally and regionally, I think is going to be important. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to ensure that we are moving forward and there's progress in Virginia. But the role of lieutenant governor is a tiebreaker. So in that regard, can make incredibly important decisions on progressive values for sure.
Okay. Some have expressed concern that Virginia Democrats have given too much attention to Northern Virginia in regards to economic policy the last 8 years. How will you make sure that all of Virginia benefits from economic growth if you are Lieutenant Governor?
I love that question. Listen, Northern Virginia is an economic development driver. There is no doubt about that. But the rest of Virginia needs more attention. I'm from Hampton Roads, the second largest voting block in Virginia. I think having some diversity on our statewide ticket, and representing other areas is going to be important. But not only representing Hampton Roads, representing Central Virginia and Southwest Virginia and South Side and the Eastern Shore that I mentioned, I think is going to be important. And the work that I've done statewide thus far, I mentioned some of the statewide efforts and initiatives I've been involved with. The networks and the understanding I have there is going to be important for sure. I'm going to get back to this broadband issue. If we want to expand jobs and business throughout the Commonwealth, there has to be high-speed, reliable, affordable internet there. One of the things I'm doing here in Hampton Roads, I helped to stand up our regional broadband ring effort, where we are connecting 5 cities' infrastructure together to create a 110-mile highway of municipally owned fiber that will connect to the subsea cables coming into Virginia Beach. Why is that important? It's the fastest internet speed of anything coming onto the East Coast. And we, through this new Southside Network Authority, are going to be able to market out that additional capacity and fiber and bring in more internet providers to try and lower our prices and increase our speeds, and it's a huge economic development driver. We want to extend that throughout the entire Commonwealth too. But listen, this is a lieutenant governor's job, is one of its roles in code is to be a member of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. So with my business background, my sales and marketing background, the ability to go out and help attract businesses is going to be important, and I'm ready to take that on. But businesses will only come here if we've got good workers. So we've got to also ensure that people are trained, that they're paid fairly, and that they're educated well. And so I think it's 2 sides of the coin. As Democrats, we often, we don't talk about business enough. And I don't know why, but the Republicans often have people think of the Republicans as being the business-friendly party. Democrats are business-friendly. We're about jobs. Good jobs, good paying jobs. And so we've got to ensure that we focus on that and work with the business community to create those for sure.
Okay, so obviously, to become lieutenant governor, you'd have to resign your seat on the Norfolk City Council, which you've been a part of since 2016. What would you say has been your greatest accomplishment so far in your time on that council?
I am, I'm proud of a lot of different things that I've done, both within the city and within the region. In the city, one of the things that I created was an event called Engage Norfolk, and I've held it for 4 years. It was something I started soon after coming into office. When I came back on a train from the Women's March in D.C., and I saw all these folks who all of a sudden were woke, right? They were like, I got to get involved and I've got to do something, but they didn't know where to start. And so I stood up this event with a handful of grassroots volunteers in 3 weeks, and we had over 1,000 people show up to the first event. Our theme was Turn Your Passion into Action, and we had over 100 organizations there, all the elected officials. We held civic workshops, and we've had that same turnout every year. I think connecting the dots between those who want to help and those who need the help is something I'm very proud of, and something I'd love to scale statewide, because I think we have a lot of human capital that exists throughout the Commonwealth that isn't being put to good use. And so to the extent that we can connect those dots, I think that's going to be really important. Really focusing on public service as we come out of this COVID economy, helping the kids who are going to need extra tutoring and mentoring, helping seniors, helping with our local communities where, listen, in Norfolk, we've had to cut our budgets for mowing grass and taking care of our parks, and we need volunteers out helping us with that. So as Lieutenant Governor, I'd love to be the Chief Engagement Officer, work with the Commonwealth, the Secretary of the Commonwealth on our boards and commissions efforts, but also expand that to just really create a brand that we are the Commonwealth that cares. Outside of that, from a regional standpoint, I'm proud of the work that I've done on our regional branding effort for the 757, which is how we like to refer to Hampton Roads now. The regional broadband ring, a huge effort. Getting 5 cities to jointly invest infrastructure dollars is not an easy task, and very proud of that. And that's in general chairing the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, which represents the 17 municipalities or 1.7 million people of the region. It's, Joe, it's a bit of a microcosm of the Commonwealth. It includes very rural counties like Southampton and Surrey and Isle of Wight, very urban communities like Norfolk and Hampton, and suburban and ex-urban areas like Chesapeake and James City County, Republicans and Democrats alike. And the fact of the matter is we sit together monthly and we tackle regional issues. We've come up with a standard to address sea level rise. We've gone all in to support offshore wind. We've tackled this broadband access issue that I've already mentioned. And most recently, we've all come together to address the issue of vaccine distribution. And in January, to be honest with you, we had a lot of concerns about where things were going in the Commonwealth on vaccine distribution, and sent a joint letter to the governor outlining our concerns and ideas on how we could improve. I'm pleased to say that the governor's office responded and has adopted some of our suggestions. And those are the sorts of things, when you can bring people together and build coalitions regardless of party and get things done, that is the background that I bring, and the skill set that I look to deploy as lieutenant governor.
Okay, so you've already mentioned broadband access as one of your big policies, but so can you give me two more that you'd
Yeah.
push for if you're elected lieutenant governor?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I focusing on workforce development. How do we ensure that our community colleges are more accessible and the best quality possible? So, we need to examine the pay scale of our professors in our community colleges, because if we want to provide the best education, we need the best teachers. So that's number one. Looking at how we can make community colleges more affordable. I'm a big fan of the new G3 program that was just adopted by the General Assembly, which is reducing the cost and providing stipends for those who are going to community colleges. But I think we need to continue to examine that, but also work with our trade schools and our CTE, or career and technical education programs, and our K-12 institutions. And how do we pair up between our high schools and our community colleges for dual enrollment programs, so that we are ensuring when our kids graduate that they're ready for either college, military, or career. Here in Norfolk, one of the things that we've brought to the area is a school called the Aviation Institute of Maintenance. It basically trains our airline mechanics. And what I found recently from them and learned was that 80% of the folks who work on our airplanes are 50 years old or older. So, and this is something that apparently is as I'm learning, is an issue throughout our trades. We have a big chasm between from ages, and there's just going to be a lot of folks in need of building trades, HVAC, airline mechanics, etc. And so, as a Commonwealth and as Lieutenant Governor, I'd love to focus on those middle skilled jobs and how we can expand those and make sure we're training people up for those jobs, as well as the green jobs of the future that are going to be dealing with all of the solar, offshore wind, energy efficiency, the new grid, etc. So that's you asked me for two, that would be number one. The second thing would be to continue to work on environmental issues, and specifically flooding. Flooding is not just a coastal Virginia issue anymore. It is an issue in Roanoke and Danville and Stanton and Alexandria and Chesterfield. Because of climate change, we're seeing these increased precipitation events, or what some people call rain bombs. And these situations, these events are causing major structural damage within towns and counties and cities around the Commonwealth. So I have called for the creation of a Commonwealth Flood Board that would be similar to the Commonwealth Transportation Board to address flooding throughout the entire state. Would love to focus on that. And that really deals with the climate change adaptation measures that we already mentioned. Of course, we need to continue to focus on expanding the Virginia Clean Economy Act, and to the extent that we can ramp up and become, advance our energy goals to get to our goals sooner, that would be great too. And then work with industry, work with our communities. I'd love to see more solar throughout all of our communities. I've worked locally to get solar on some of our local churches, for example, our schools, all of our municipal buildings. I think that's something we need to focus on as well.
Okay, and then one final question for you, Andrea. You've just been sworn in. You've become lieutenant governor. What's the first thing you do?
Hug my family, who have been amazing through this journey thus far. Listen, this is really hard to run a statewide race in the middle of a pandemic in a field of 8 people. And while the good news is I've been home more than I would typically be, because so much of this is virtual, I am holed up in my living room with the door closed and a ring light on my face most days. And I start at 8 a.m. and I'm finished by 9 or 10 p.m. And I don't mind working hard, but they have been troopers and they have just supported me. And I'm fortunate to have them in my camp, and my two very patient dogs who are walked a lot less frequently now. So yeah, I mean, listen, I've got three boys, 16, 19, and 22, and an amazing husband. And I think the first thing I would do is say thank them. I would thank my staff and my volunteers. I've just got an amazing team, and you can't run a race and be successful unless you have just the most committed folks ever. And I'm just really grateful to have those folks. After that, I think you sit down with the governor and you set an agenda and you determine what the governor's goals are. And I would put forth my goals that I've already mentioned in terms of broadband and workforce development and addressing environmental issues, and then get to work. You're sworn in January, so the first thing I would have to do, of course, would be presiding over the Senate. But once I got through that, I hope to be out in the community. I hope people will see a lot of me, hear from me a lot, and I want to be very accessible and be a lieutenant governor for the people.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Andria McClellan. She is again a Norfolk City Councilwoman running for Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic side. Andrea, I want to thank you for coming on with me this morning, and I wish you luck in your campaign.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Be well.
Thank you very much, man. Bye bye.